And I think, you know, if we're not careful, here we are an hour and a half into the meeting and we're still on public input and local board input. And this is too big a question to deal with in this way.
Look, can I just explain that it came up yesterday at the Community Development and Safety Committee as well, the issue of homelessness, I think, and that's going. The recommendation is that a report comes to this committee, which will be now next month, on the homelessness issue. So put that aside. We're dealing here today with boarding houses, and it's obviously a topic which has a lot of passion and concern because of the plight that we have at the present time. So I agree with Councillor Webster that we can't take this very much further. Councillor...
So, point of order. Point of order. Are you ruling I cannot speak anymore?
No, I'm not. Sorry. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have cut across you like that.
Thank you. So I just wonder whether we should be thinking about trying to put together some sort of think tank on this rather than just a council report. I mean, should we be trying to get a group of people together to form something, when that can include boarding house owners? And there are some that own quite a lot of property. I mean, we try and work our way through that.
That, I think, the report, well, the way that this is being handled is that the officers come back to obviously the next term of early in the next term of council with their observations. They'll continue the work they're doing at the present time. I think this moves it forward, and we'll get some facts on the table more than we have now. Yep. So I think that's the way forward. So that's what I'm going to rule, that we're not going to start making any decisions today further than that. Councillor Penrose, do you want to make a comment?
Mr Chair, mine's along the same lines as Councillor Clow there, I was waving my hand around for, because this is not going to achieve anything in my view. This goes deeper than this, as I said to you before. It's not just about boarding houses. And again, it comes back to compliance. You know, our regulatory guys are absolutely stretched. You know, and if you want to deal with the issue, you're going to have to front load it. Simple as that. And I continue to hear under this table, you know, about fiscal prudency and staff numbers. You know, the city is growing faster than we can keep up with. Our building guys, 132,000 inspections last 12 months. Our guys can't keep loading it. So, you know, it's bigger than this. I say a workshop or something, but we can't, to me, that's not going to achieve nothing.
Okay, well, I think we're running to the end of this term of council. Councillor Casey.
Oh, just to make a wee correction, George, the recommendation passed yesterday at the Community Development and Safety Committee relates to the development of a homelessness policy. And that's for the new council. We're aware there's a gap. We've got an outdated homeless action plan. So this will be part of the new council's remit to have to develop a policy with the agencies using the collaborative approach. And so I would see that boarding houses would be part of that.
Okay, so that will be coming up pretty early on in the new term of council, as will what we're talking about here. So. I think that really is as far as we can take this today. I'm going to thank Lydia for coming in. You've certainly scratched an issue here that brings out a lot of passion and concern, and I think that is reflecting the concern out in our communities right now. So thank you, Lydia. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Chair.
With that, I'm going to move the recommendation, seconded by Councillor Clow. I'll put those in favour.
Aye.
Against, declare that carried. Thank you. Thank you. We now will move to extraordinary business. There's no extraordinary business, no notices of motion. We now move to item 9, which is the smoke-free policy review decision on the next steps. And I'm going to move, and Councillor and I is going to second that we pursue option 2 and option 3, and now we'll have a presentation from the officers.
Mr Chairman, can I clarify my foreshadowed amendment?
Yes. So you got a foreshadowed motion with Councillor.
And I'll second Councillor Crum's. I'll second Councillor Crum's motion. Thank you.
I thought I had.
I think you'd already organised that, hadn't you,
and with your team. Thank you.
Yesterday.
Good morning, councillors. My name is Belinda Hanson. I'm the team leader for social policy and bylaws. And with me I have Kimberly Rees, policy analyst, who's been working on the policy review, and Kataraina and Mike Sinclair my two bosses. So I'm just going to give a quick run through of the report, just a précis. I know we've already talked about it this morning, so I won't take too long, and then we're happy to take some questions. So as you know, the policy aligns with the government's 2025 smoke-free goal and is designed to implement some of the council's commitments within the Auckland plan. An independent academic report has found that our policy is the most ambitious and comprehensive of all city and district councils across the country. The policy included a review clause, so scheduled a review for this year, which is now complete. So we've reviewed the intent and implementation of the policy, and a report before you today outlines the findings, options and recommendations. So the full findings report is included under a separate cover, and the agenda report summarises the findings for you in the executive summary and at paragraphs 37 to 41 of the report. The review found that the policy is successful in meeting its overall purpose of representing the council's commitment to making Auckland smoke-free by 2025. So the policy framework and intent are generally effective and well supported by stakeholders, as you've heard today. As a whole, Auckland is on track to meet the goal of less than 5% of the population smoking by 2025. However, this is not the case for Māori and Pacific groups. The review found that implementation of the policy has been gradual and fragmented, which has hindered the policy's overall effectiveness in meeting its purpose and objectives. The shortfalls of the policy's performance, though, are not due to a lack of focus, coverage, or content of the policy itself, but instead are related to a lack of communication and insufficient resources allocated to the implementation of the policy. So after reflecting on the findings, staff have identified 4 options for the committee to consider today regarding the way forward. Staff recommend option 2, which is to develop a new smoke-free policy, and we consider that this is the best way to address the findings that have come from the review. A new policy would be developed in collaboration with the sector and would help to redefine the council's role in contributing to the smoke-free 2025 goal. The current policy would conclude in 2018, so the new policy would run through to 2025. This recommendation takes into account the viewpoints of the key stakeholders, including those you've heard from today, because the review encompassed key informant interviews with 17 external stakeholder organisations. So that's a quick précis of the report, and we're happy to take any questions from the committee.
Questions from around the Councillor Crum and Councillor Casey.
Just on a really, really well done report and review, and as we come to expect from the team, just good quality stuff, and lengthy too, and 4 options as well. So just on paragraph 40 and 41, where you are referring to, or perhaps I could even say admitting to, lack of communication with stakeholders and key communities when first the policy was developed, and that essentially we could have done better. So with hindsight, what could you have done better? And my question is, can that, if you could identify a few things that you could have done better then, could that not be instigated or implemented now with option 1 in terms of tweaking the current policy?
So through the chair, thank you, Councillor Crum. I guess the quick answer is that yes, options 1 and 2 are both designed to address those improvements that the review identified. So they would both result in I guess more proactive communication, publicity campaigns, allocated budget for the signage implementation, and so a general improvement in the implementation and operation of the policy.
Thank you. Councillor Casey.
It was along the same lines. I distinctly heard the Cancer Society tell us that option 1 and 3 would be their preferred method, and would be their preferred approach. And your response to that is?
So you definitely can combine options in the paper. So definitely options 1 and 2 can be combined with option 3. As you know, in the report, we have indicated that staff don't recommend option 3. We have some clear cautions about regulating for some of this that make us recommend that. So we, whilst you can, and of course councillors can do anything with your resolutions, I suppose staff are still very cautious about taking a regulatory approach to this matter.
Thank you. Councillor Chris, Mr. Chris McDonald, sorry.
Kia ora, and thanks very much for a very good report. I'm very impressed by the Māori impact statement. We've done some really in-depth analysis there and made some recommendations. I mean, we totally support option 2. What we'd like to see, though, is perhaps a little bit more emphasis on, you know, some actions around populations of need within that, the Southern Initiative, Māori and Pacific populations, even to the extent that we would like to see an action plan that was more deliberate around taking a more targeted approach. We know that universal policies tend to, you know, be used, tend to affect populations differently, or in different populations differently. So I'm wondering, Mr. Chair, if I could propose just a slight amendment to that the council will develop an action plan to target those most in need, including Māori, Pacific and residents of the Southern Initiative, given that those two objectives, that you need more traction on those two objectives in the previous policy.
Okay, well, can you write it out and Mr. Kimpton will have a look at it. Thank you. Councillor Webster.
Yes, thank you. And I reiterate it with a good report. Do you think, though, having heard what you've heard this morning and certainly having sat around this table on numerous occasions over the last 5 years and heard submissions as we had on the bylaw outdoor dining, and having seen what has been achieved in Wanganui and Palmerston North, that, I mean, why do we, could you tell me why we have to have a new policy? It just seems that we don't need to go out, surely, to talk to groups that we know what they think. I mean, we've heard from the public, we've heard from the Cancer Society, we've heard from medical, we've heard from youth, we've heard from, I mean, the number of people we've heard from, as someone said this morning, is nearly as much as the dog laws. I mean, why do we have to reinvent the wheel? Why can't we be...
We don't. We've already got a great policy.
Well, we don't.
Oh,
I mean, so I'm asking why we have to start again.
We don't.
Well, I'm asking the question, because that's what that
Okay, well,
says,
let the
start
officer
again.
answer.
Cautionary
Let the
approach.
officer answer.
It's a good question. Thank you, Councillor
Thank you.
Webster.
I just get a bit...
So I think option 1 and just the status quo, they are always legitimate options for the council to take. One of the reasons that we have recommended option 2, I suppose, is because for the reasons that member Chris McDonald has set out. So we consider that we need to take a much more proactive and targeted approach. And so when you're now looking at, there are specific target groups and specific populations now perhaps that a policy needs to be more focused towards, including, actually, we haven't heard from smokers and we haven't worked with them a little bit more around co-design in terms of when you get to specific target groups and you've achieved a lot of gains, it is very hard to achieve the last gains in terms of that 15% remaining. And so we believed that a much more targeted approach needs to be undertaken, and it felt like that didn't fit within the existing policy, that it would be more of a new policy. However, we very much, if you specified, that could be the specific area where we focused on in terms of option 1. So we could be really clear that it's option 1, but actually we want to specifically improve this. So Member McDonald's resolution that might be being typed up now could be your clear specification around what you want us to do in option 1.